Hey, today's video is going to be an instructional video on what a blockchain is and what a block is within a blockchain. So I'm going to use the analogy of colors for this. And it breaks down, unfortunately. There's no good analogy I can find. There's no better analogy, but this will help at least. So supposing you have 10 shades of red and you have 10 shades of blue. And then we want you to find the combination of one of those reds and one of those blues that equals the purple we want. And there's 10 squared amounts of purples because you have, for every one red, you have 10 possible blues you can mix it with. So multiply 10 by 10, you have 100. There's 100 different shades of purple we can get out of this thing. And the network is presenting to the world a problem. It says, we need someone to figure out what red and blue combines to make this purple. We know the purple, everyone knows the purple, but no one knows which red and blue have to be combined. And so you get to work. You combine red 1 with blue 1 and you get purple 1. Nope, doesn't match. So let's try red 1 with blue 2 and you get purple 2. Doesn't match. Okay, let's try a random one. Red 9 with blue 1. We get purple 90. Oh, it matches. We got it. Now what happens is you can say to the rest of the network, I found it. It was red 90 and blue 1. Sorry, red 9 and blue 1. And the network tries those two. It doesn't have to try all of the combinations. This is the magic of it. It just tries the two that you said were the right two, and it goes, do. Yep, it's the right purple. Thank you. And that's a new block. That's how a new block is found. In maths, it works a little bit differently than colors. Colors, you can get progressively closer to the right shade just by looking at it. But with maths, and well, due to the avalanche effect in cryptography, you get random colors. You don't get something that's like predictable, like purple is predictably the outcome from red and blue. Instead, you get completely random colors. And if you change ever so slightly, if you've got, red 1,400,000,000, because we're talking huge numbers now, you've got red, million, you've got blue 500,000,000, 1,408, like, if you try those two, you get a random color out of it. And if you just change it to, you go 1 up, you add 1 to the blue you were using. I'm not going to use blue 500,000,000, I'm going to use blue 500,000,001. The color you get as an output is, again, completely different to what it was when you used blue 500,000,000. Wow. What that means is you don't get progressively closer to it. So solving a problem, it's not like a getting warmer, getting colder kind of problem solving thing where you get closer and you can make intelligent guesses, and the last guess informs your next guess, like it does when you're getting warmer, getting colder. Like, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100, and in the blockchain space you say 50 and they say no. In the warmer, colder game it says cold, 60 warmer, 70 warmer, 80 colder. You see, that's why it doesn't do that for you. So what everyone's left doing is the mathematical equivalent of guessing colors and never getting any hint and never getting closer to anything. The only way in which they get closer to a solution when they are attempting to mine a block as a Bitcoin miner is there are this many solutions that are possible. And if you try all of them, one of them is guaranteed to be the solution. But you've only got 10 minutes before, on average, someone else is going to beat you to the punch. So you need to find it within 10 minutes. And if, for some reason, the Bitcoin network starts finding blocks too quickly, because this is how new coins are created, remember, and we don't want unpredictability in that. This is not politics. If they start getting found too fast, the Bitcoin network says, hey, there's an extra billion shades of red to try now. And you're going to have to try them all or get lucky again. And what that means is it slows back down to being on average 10 minutes. So the point with all this, well, there's so many points here to cover, but one of the main points is that this is called proof of work because you don't get to show You don't get to fake it. You don't get to say, oh, it's that shade of red and that shade of blue. No one's going to believe you unless when they try those two shades, they get the shade of purple the whole network wanted. And you don't get to show them the right combination unless you actually tried a bunch and you actually found the solution. You might have got lucky and got it on your first guess, but that's not the point. The point is, you can't fake doing that. It's real work that has to go into it. You're really trying. In this case, you're plugging in random numbers and hoping that it comes out with the correct hash, which is basically the same thing as mixing colors together and hoping it comes out as the right blend, but without the progressive, without the getting closer to a solution, with the exception of the fact that you eliminate possibilities along the way. But that's the only progressive element to Bitcoin mining. So what all this is to say is the proof of work element is the fact that there is related basically to the expenditure of energy. And that's the only thing that can't be faked. You can't fake the expenditure of energy. You can't fake the outcome of a result of using energy. You can't say this car is going to travel 50 meters down the road, but it's not going to use any energy doing it. The universe doesn't allow that. And this is basically the most fundamental law of physics. And it's so incredibly fundamental that it means Bitcoin literally becomes Bitcoin is something I will rely on as my way of storing value for my whole life and for everyone I know, literally because of the fact that I know that if you want to screw around with it, you've got to have changed the laws of physics. And that is something you can rely on way more than you can rely on your government not to hyperinflate your currency. But anyway, I'm trying to stay technical and educational in this rather than bring it into the greater context of why you would want to buy Bitcoin. But I think it helps to talk about why you might take some comfort in the security of the network there. So there are a few other things to get into. What about the threats? What happens if I decide I want to change a block or change some of the data in the block? Well, this is where it becomes a chain, right? Because one of the colors we're mixing together to get that final blend is a color that was the color of the previous block. Now that's huge to understand because it means if I try to change any of the data from the past, I have to redo all of the work since then. I have to recalculate every block from scratch. Remember? Because if I want to change a transaction from 10 blocks ago, I can change one tiny bit of data in that block from 10 blocks ago, but guess what? Now all of the guesses are giving me completely different colors. So I have to just start again from the beginning. I have to redo all the work. So I'm going back 10 blocks ago where I sent some Bitcoins to someone else. I've made a new transaction which sends the same Bitcoins back to me now. And I want to put that transaction in that block instead of the one where it went somewhere else. That's me trying to run a scam. Okay. So now I've got to I've got to try all the different combinations of colors again to find a solution for that block and get the right color again. Not easy to do. And guess what? While I'm doing it, the network is accelerating on without me, and I don't equal the power of the Bitcoin network. Remember, I haven't said this in this video, but this is an important point to bear in mind here. The Bitcoin network ultimately only accepts the longest chain because that is the largest amount of cumulative proof of work. So I'm trying to change a block from 10 blocks ago. I'm trying to change some data within that and then get the block again. I might find it. Maybe it takes me 8 months to find it. But now it's not 10 blocks ago as far as the Bitcoin network is concerned. It's 50,000 blocks ago. Oh my God, I have to redo all of the work for all of that. And I'm stuck on, the next block from the one with the malicious transaction in it. And while I'm on that one, they're going to get another 50,000 blocks ahead of me. I'm never going to catch up. And I'm using loads of electricity. And I'm just spending money on that electricity. Maybe $1,000 a day I'm spending on electricity. If I were to use that to mine collectively to find new blocks that the network will accept, where as a pool we divide the reward between us, then I just make money. So I can either try and do this scam, which is never going to be accepted by the network, or I can just make money. That's the incentive structure that makes people mine. it makes people mine honestly, and it makes people never ever try and screw with the network, because every time, the fact that people are incentivized, every time someone can attack Bitcoin, if they can get all of the mining power, if they can equal all of the mining power of the Bitcoin network, they can mine bad blocks faster than the network can mine good blocks. But every time someone starts on that journey, they make it harder for anyone else that might want to do that. Because if you can get 10% of the mining power of the Bitcoin network, you're not going to be able to mine malicious blocks faster than the other 90% can mine good blocks. So again, what do you do with your 10%? You mine good blocks like they do and earn money doing it, a lot of money, and you don't waste money on electricity to mine blocks that the network's going to ignore. What does that do? That means the next guy who wants to be a malicious miner now has to equal your power as well, and so on and so on and so on. And this is why the hash rate of Bitcoin goes like this. And it's vertical. It's even more absurd looking than the price chart. It just goes up and up and up exponentially. And it's tying Bitcoin into the laws of physics and bringing it as part of reality by its consumption of energy rather than response to sort of political decision making. And it's an essential tenet of it. And I'm not going to get into why it's a revolution in energy, because it really is, and it's wonderful. And this, one of the stupidest criticisms ever of Bitcoin is the fact that it uses a lot of energy, and it's an annoying one. But I'd have to make a separate video on that. But back to the point about what a blockchain is and how the incentive structures make it just such a beautiful and reliable thing. If you're trying to change that transaction from 10 blocks ago, you can't do it. But you've got to realize now why the blockchain structure exists there in the first place, and why Bitcoin's blockchain is a reliable database. Why do we need this clunky and crappy database? Why don't we just abandon it? Because when miners are mining blocks, they're grabbing transactions from all from their own mempool, which is talking to everyone else's mempool. What's the mempool? Okay, the mempool is when I make a Bitcoin transaction, my node, or in your case, if you're not even running a node, your little wallet software on your phone where you're not running a node, that's connected to a node somewhere else. You make a Bitcoin transaction. You say, hey, Bitcoin network, there's some coins sitting here. I want them to move over here. Signed me. And that's a digital signature. You need the private key to be able to sign that. And so you sign it. You say, I want to move coins from point A to point B. So what happens? You upload that transaction into a node. That node then broadcasts it to all the nodes it's connected to, which is about, however many. It could be 10 nodes, it could be 1,000 nodes, whatever. And they look at it and they say, am I going to put this in my mempool? They're not miners, remember, they're just nodes. They are a transaction, if it's legit, will spread around the world pretty much instantly and get in all the mempools around the world instantly if it's legit. But they're all checking to see if it's legit. They're saying, you've moved coins from point A to point B. First off, were there coins at point A in the first place? They check the entire history of the blockchain and they go, yep, there were. Second off, is point B a valid Bitcoin address? Yep, it is. Okay, thirdly, is the signature valid? Because I can spend anyone's Bitcoin at any time. I can generate a transaction to do it. But if I don't sign it with the private key that generated the address that the Bitcoins are sitting at in the first place, everyone will say that's not a valid transaction. So assuming it is a valid transaction, it's spread around the world, it's now sitting in mempools of nodes all over the world. Now what we need is a miner to grab it and put it in a block. And remember, this is the magic of it, because if I try to make a different transaction after the fact, I can't stick that in a block instead. Even if it's the same coins moving to a very similar address signed by the same guy, the color changes completely, remember? And the onus would be on me to replace all of the work. So I'm not going to be able to do that. So the miners are the people that give us so much, they give us so much resilience as a network, and our hash rate is so large that it means that people can't do certain types of attacks on us, and that creates, what that does is it creates security and resilience, and it's fundamentally known as the proof of work requirement, and it's the real innovation here, but it's only half the story, as I get into all over the place on this channel, because you have another step after that, which is who verifies what the miners come up with? Who are the people that say, yes, all of the transactions in that block are valid, and you must have done the work because I enforce a certain amount of difficulty. There were over 100 trillion possible solutions to that block. You found it. I didn't know what it was, but I've verified it now. I only had to try one of the solutions, and it was the right one. So I guess you did the work, and you must have done the work. So great. But now I get to say, is that a valid block or not? Miners got to say to me, is your transaction valid or not? And I got to say to them, is your block valid or not? That's a two-legged system, and the two things reinforce each other. Now, this is one of the hard parts to understand about the architecture of the network, because you need both. If you only have the blockchain, then all you're doing is hashing bits of data together, finding complicated solutions to find a final hash or a Merkle root or the ultimate color blend, and then telling that to yourself again, and then just mining another thing on top of it, asking yourself questions and answering them eventually. And yes, the proof of work requirement's all there and stuff, but ultimately no one's really listening or checking your work or validating it, and that's really essential, and that's the harder part to understand. And I don't know, I don't want to go too far down that road. Maybe I should make a separate video on that. So back to mining and what is a block. I think I've made it. I think I've actually done a decent job explaining it. It's a very esoteric concept to most people, but it's essential to understanding this. What does it mean for you as a user? It just means I've made a transaction. I've made it fit within the rules of the network, and now it's in a block. Ah, yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on. Why do we need the blockchain? Why can't we just have all the transactions sitting around in mempools? Well, because you can't have conflicting data in the blockchain, because then all the nodes will reject the blocks the miners mine. You can have conflicting data in mempools. I can publish two transactions at the same time, one where I send you the money I was using to pay for something, where I was buying something off you that you can't get back from me. Maybe I'm buying something online or any other kind of scam. And then I do another transaction where I send exactly the same bitcoins and make another valid transaction that sends the coins back to an address I control. What happens if the network decides, if all the mempools somehow ignore the transaction I made where I paid you, and they pay attention to the transaction where I sent the money back to myself? That means you don't get your money. How do we know which one's the real transaction? We could say, whichever one the network saw first, but the network doesn't have a central point, does it? No two places can know the same information at the same time, because once you have point A and point B, and they are not in the same identical spot in the universe, they are separated by the speed of light. And this was an old computing problem an old computer science problem called the Byzantine generals problem, which I can't believe I'm getting into it, but let's go for it. You have a general on this side of a town and a general on that side of a town, and if they can invade together, they can win, but if either of them goes at it alone, they will lose. So General A sends a message saying we invade at noon tomorrow, okay? And he thinks to himself, but what if General B doesn't get my message? Then I'm gonna lose. So I'll get him to respond with, okay, I got your message. And General B gets the message, sends it back to General A saying, yep, noon tomorrow, all good, got your message. Then General B thinks to himself, wait, but what if he doesn't get my response? Then I'll go in alone, and then I'll die. So I'll get him to respond saying, yeah, I got your response. You're good for 12, I'm good for 12. And it goes on forever. When General A gets the response, he goes, okay, I'll send a response back that I got the response. You see the problem? So what this means is, unless they are in the same location, they can't know the same information at the same time, because they are separated by space. Bitcoin nodes are all separated by space. How do we say which transaction happened at which time by which person? Not by which person, but how do we say that's the transaction? That one happened first. That's really where the coins went. Ignore this one. He was trying to scam you. You can't do that because you can only do that if you're centralized, and Bitcoin is decentralized. And what we did was we made something where we said we need to put stuff in order. We need to create a history here. We need to put stuff, this happened before that happened. And that's what Bitcoin is. That's what Bitcoin's blockchain is. And I've heard it described this way for years, and it took me a long time to understand it. What it fundamentally is time. It's putting things in order in time. And it's very hard to do that, but we found a way to do it. And because I can send a transaction where I pay you, then I can send the same coins back to myself. But it's not about if I do one before the other. It's about what the network says in its blockchain. Once it's in the blockchain, it says that happened. And you can change history if you want. You can go back to the block where it was mined and the block the transaction was in. And you can say, I'm going to change that and I'm going to redo the proof of work and I'm going to remine it, and the network will accept it all as valid. But then the network will only do that if you can outmine the rest of them. This is called that's the double spend problem, right? That was the double spend problem from the off. It was, how do you stop people spending the same money twice? And that's how you solve it. You do it with a blockchain. But you can only do it, a blockchain can only solve that problem in certain circumstances. And I'm determined not to make this a video where I start shitting on other projects which are using blockchains and pretending they offer the kind of security that Bitcoin does, because they don't. Nothing does, except Bitcoin. And I'm trying to focus in this video on what's good about Bitcoin and how it works and one of the essential technical elements of it. And I hope I've done so here. If you have any questions on it, please let me know, and I'd like to elaborate on any of the details in this that people are finding interesting. Thank you so much for watching.